When you think of the biggest Clásicos in international football, Brazil and Argentina come to mind, to a lesser extent, Mexico and the United States, but you don't really think of Venezuela and Colombia. And yet, if you were to ask the majority of Venezuelans who would be the Clásico to their international team, most would say Colombia. As somebody that supports the Colombian national team, I disagree with Venezuela being the Clásico to Colombia. For me, there's a variety of factors that you have to look at in order to determine what makes a Clásico. And there's not a real or not enough footballing arguments between Colombia and Venezuela for me to say that that's a Clásico. When you look at their arguments, Venezuela's arguments for making a Clásico with Colombia, it's outside of football. It comes with the borders because both countries are right next to each other. But if that were the case, then Colombia Panama would have to be a Clásico, Colombia Ecuador, Colombia Brazil, Colombia Peru would also have to be Clásicos because Colombia shares borders with all those countries. So I don't think that's enough to make it a Clásico. Colombia shares a lot of music with Venezuela, like vallenato, for instance, cumbia, reggaeton. But again, that's external. Colombia and Venezuela like to argue which country has better cuisine. They like to argue which country has better women. But again, these are all external factors outside of football. For me, when you look at a Clásico, you have to look strictly for footballing reasons. And there are, in my opinion, three factors that determine a Clásico. The success or the achievements both countries have in football. Are they at the same level of each other? Is one country holding so many more titles than the other? Has one country done more than the other in football? For me, they have to have been in the same tier at least. Another factor is the level of, I would say, just hatred between both fan bases of the teams. Do both fan bases look at each other as the biggest threat? Or does one fan base not really care about the other? For me, the supporters have a big role to play in a Clásico. And the third factor for me would be how competitive are both countries when they face off against each other. Is one country always winning against the other? Is one country always beating the other in big games? How's their head-to-head record? For me, it has to be competitive in order to make it a Clásico. So, if you look at those three factors between Venezuela and Colombia, let's start off with how competitive it is. Well, if you look at the all-time record, only looking at official games between Colombia and Venezuela, Colombia has beaten Venezuela 14 times. Venezuela has beaten Colombia 4 times. Those 14 wins against Venezuela, 10 of which came in World Cup qualifying and 4 came in the Copa America. For Venezuela, 3 games they beat Colombia were in World Cup qualifying and they beat Colombia once in the Copa America. So Colombia has beaten Venezuela by a difference of 10 games. For me, that's not a competitive rivalry right there. And another thing about this thing is that there's no big game between Venezuela and Colombia. As I said before, all these games have already been between World Cup qualifying and the Copa America group stage. Colombia and Venezuela have never faced off in a knockout game at an international tournament. And for me, quarterfinals, semis, and finals are important games because there you can eliminate your rival. And there you can have a declaration of I'm better than you because I eliminated you from the tournament. And yet, Colombia and Venezuela have yet to do that. So right there, I don't think it's a competitive rivalry. Consider that Colombia has 10 games ahead of Venezuela in the win column. And there's no big game between them to really settle like, yeah, you may have beaten me here, but I beat you where it mattered. There's no big game between Colombia and Venezuela, so it's not a competitive rivalry from that standpoint. When you look at it from the standpoint of success or the amount of achievements each national team has done, well, Colombia has won a Copa America, and Colombia has played a total of 3 Copa America finals. Venezuela, on the other hand, have yet to win a Copa America, and they have yet to even reach a Copa America final. If we even look at it deeper, Colombia have 5 third place finishes at the Copa America. Aside from their 3 finals, they have 5 third place finishes. Venezuela have never even gotten to the podium at the Copa America. Venezuela's best performance was reaching the 4th place in the 2011 Copa America, and Colombia have actually gotten 4th place twice. So Colombia in total have 10 top 4 finishes. Venezuela only have 1 top 4 finish. So Colombia have done way more than Venezuela at the Copa America. And we can even add more to this when you look at Colombia qualifying to the World Cup already 6 times and reaching the quarterfinals in 2014, making it past the group stage in 1990 and in 2018. In comparison, if you look at Venezuela have never qualified to the World Cup. They never even qualified to the World Cup. So when you look at it through Copa America or the World Cup in these international tournaments, Colombia has done way more in comparison to Venezuela. So for me, Colombia is a tier above Venezuela when it comes to success and achievements in international football, which is another reason why I don't think it's a Clasico. Lastly, if we look at the supporters of both countries and how they view each other, while most Venezuelans do consider Colombia to be a Clasico, but for reasons that are outside of football, most Colombians don't see Venezuela as a Clasico, simply because they just see Venezuela's national team as being inferior. When Colombia plays Venezuela, the Colombian expectation is to blow out Venezuela, to beat them by 3 goals or more. When Colombia beat Venezuela 1-0 in Barranquilla in the opening game of this qualifying cycle for 2026, most Colombians were disappointed because they only beat them 1-0. They were expecting a blowout. Simply put, there's not enough respect from the Colombians toward the Venezuelans. And if you were to ask the Colombians which national team they want to beat the most, it's not going to be Venezuela. It's going to be Argentina or some other country. So because there's a lack of, I would say, respect and genuine interest in beating Venezuela from Colombians, that unequal relationship for me makes it so that it's not a Clasico. While Venezuela can, harp all they want about it being a Clasico because they always want to beat Colombia, Colombia does not. Of course, Colombia wants to beat Venezuela, but it's not the priority to beat Venezuela. The priority is to beat other countries. Venezuela's priority is to beat Colombia. Colombia's priority is to beat other countries. So, looking at those 3 factors, as I said before, achievements in football, how competitive it is between both countries, historically speaking, and how each fan base views the other, I think I made it clear that Colombia is not a Clásico de Venezuela. If there was a Clásico I had to pick for Colombia, which I don't think there really is, because there lacks the extra support. I feel like the fan base factor really hurts Colombia. It would be Peru. Peru and Colombia have knocked out each other in multiple Copa Americas. Colombia beat Peru in the 2001 Copa America that Colombia won, and in the 2016 Copa America as well. Peru knocked out Colombia in 1975, and I believe they knocked out Colombia in 2011. So they knocked out each other in multiple international tournaments in big games, pretty much. So it is a competitive rivalry. Both countries have gotten to the quarterfinals of the World Cup. So there's also an equivalent factor right there in terms of success. And really, if you think about it, the big issue between Peru and Colombia would be Peru not viewing Colombia as a Clásico, and Colombia likewise not viewing Peru as a Clásico. But if you look at the history and how competitive it is, and if you look at each country's achievements in football, both have won a Copa America, both got to the World Cup quarterfinals, it's very on the same tier in my opinion. But again, there lacks that emotional factor from the fan bases toward each other. But for me, Peru would have a better claim to be a Clásico than Venezuela. They meet 2 of the 3 criteria. Venezuela don't meet any of the 3 criteria. So, in short, Colombia is not the Clásico de Venezuela. Venezuela has to achieve more in football in order to become the Clásico de Colombia. Venezuela have to qualify to the World Cup and at least make it to the quarterfinals, or at the very least win a Copa America in order to start becoming at the same tier in success and achievements toward Colombia. They would also have to beat Colombia in a big game, say the quarterfinals, semifinals, or final of Copa America, or even the round of 16 or a knockout game at the World Cup. But simply put, Venezuela has more to do, more to achieve in football in order to become the Clasico de Colombia. So, thank you for watching the video. If you liked it, please share the content with somebody if you believe they find this interesting, and subscribe to the channel. De todo, un poquito de todo. Thank you for watching, and until the next time.